Chapter 19, Legal Descriptions and Deeds. In this chapter, we're going to discuss the three methods of describing real estate, real property legal descriptions. Um, we're going to learn about the four types of deeds that are commonly used in New Jersey and the effects of the various clauses and the anatomy of a deed. So, what is a legal description? It's an exact way of describing real property in a contract, deed, mortgage, or other document that's acceptable in a court of law. A legal description can be combined or altered only by a competent authority like a surveyor or title attorney. A deed is a document that conveys one's rights, title, or interest in real property. It's not just used to transfer the ownership, it's also used to transfer your rights or partial ownership, the interests in the property. You have air rights, mineral rights, right? The subsurface rights. So it must include an adequate description of the land and what exactly is being conveyed. The three legal descriptions of land are metes and bounds, rectangular, also known as the government survey, also known as the public land survey system, but they probably won't mention that one on exam. It'll probably be expressed as a rectangular or government survey. A plat map of a subdivision recorded in a county where the land is located. So a deed, what is a deed? A deed is a document that's used to transfer one's right, title, or interest in real property. Let's highlight legal descriptions. An exact way of describing real estate in a contract, deed, mortgage, or other document that's acceptable by a court of law, just like I had it up here. So I got it in the slide, or you can have it highlighted down here. And land can be described by three methods: by metes and bounds, by a government survey, also known as a rectangular survey, by referencing a plat map filed in the county clerk's office where the land is located. In New Jersey, legal descriptions may be combined by different descriptive methods, but those only different descriptive methods would be the plat map and the metes and bounds. And you'll see why in a moment. So, a legal description. Here, this is a pretty good notes for you. You wanted to highlight it or snap a picture of this. Legal descriptions should always include the name of the county and state in which the land is located, because in New Jersey we have several municipalities that share the same name but are in different counties. A benchmark is a local permanent marker that aids surveyors in their measurements, which may be based on these markers rather than the actual benchmark, which could be miles away. A datum is a measurement of elevation. It's the point, line, or surface from which elevation is measured according to the USGS, that's the United States Geological Survey, which, if you did not know, that is a department of the government that monitors our planet. They monitor us, they monitor seismic activity, they monitor the oceans and the sea levels and the storms and volcanic activity. They monitor our weather from space. If you ever looked in the news, and they show you the radar on screen. Often the satellite imagery that they use, they'll have a USGS logo on them. If you're watching the weather, one of those channels with the news with the weather, often you'll see on those radars the USGS logo on there, because that's the United States Geological Survey, which is a department of government. They own that satellite. Now, they define sea zero elevation as the mean sea level at New York Harbor. No, the sea is not angry. That's not what the mean means. The mean means that it's the average sea level, discounting the outliers where we have higher sea levels because of storms temporarily. Now, monuments are markers at the corner of a property that mark the boundaries, often with wood or steel stakes or ribbons in the ground or attached to a tree. Now, there's three legal descriptions of land. We have the metes and bounds, the rectangular or government survey, and a plat map. So we're going to learn about the differences of each one. So far, we just spoke about the markers, though. Okay, so with the markers, these are those surveyor benchmarks. Actually on this slide right here, back that up. This is a slide that has all the information that you need in one spot, but what I'm going to do is we could remove all of this so that future classes don't need to go over that information over and over and over again. I'll have it on another slide. Don't worry. I have it several times coming up. So basically, I just did this. And here are the benchmarks. Here's a bunch of benchmarks. You could find them out in the wilderness. You could be out hiking in the woods, and you'll find something like this embedded in a rock. Look at the date on this one, 1933. It was the U.S. Coastal and Geodetic Survey. Elevation 673.365 feet. $250 fine or imprisonment. Well, in 1933, $250 was a hefty fine. I'm sure it may be more than that by now, I would hope, unless the government didn't revisit that. If you disturb this marker, because others may be reliant on it. There's a database of where these markers are somewhere. Here's one from 1947. I can't see the dates in all these. Here's one that was placed in 1882. Reset in 2013, it looks like, or 2018. I can't really tell. In the Adirondacks. Here's a survey marker that's just a sign. Here's a couple other looking survey markers. Here's one from 1890 in a rock out in the woods somewhere, right? Here's one that's in a brick. This one looks like it's by a dam or something like that. Here's another surveyor marker. That's one. Disney has their own. Here's another one from 1923 somewhere by the Coast and Geodetic Survey. See, often they have the elevation imprinted on them too, so that you don't have to go back to New York Harbor to see, work your way back from New York Harbor up to the property that you're doing a survey on, which may be many, 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 many miles away from New York Harbor, to find out how many feet above sea level you are. At some point, someone did that measurement, and then they placed a local marker that says, as of this point, that's how many feet above sea level you are. So you don't got to do that work to work your way all the way back from New York Harbor again. Instead, you could work your way from that local marker. Here's another survey mark. All right, so surveys have been important since the beginning of ownership of land, right? Here are some basic surveyor's tools. You got the compass, they got the readouts, they got the surveyor's chains in the kit there. And they usually work in two-man teams, at least two-man teams. Here's a picture of a couple of old surveyor explorers. You remember a lot of historic people, historic significance, played a role in surveying land in the United States. As we explored this new land and started mapping it out for the states and municipalities and individual properties for ownership. Look at this guy. He's even disappearing like he was on Back to the Future or something. This is a picture taken on a piece of tin. So, and there are 43,560 square feet in an acre, if you remember that from the first day of class. We're also going to learn about a couple new units of measure. A township has nothing to do with Woodbridge Township or Edison Township. When we talk about those forms of township for the names, we're talking about the form of structure chosen to run a government. This is talking about the townships as a unit of measure. A township is 36 square miles or 6 miles squared. A section is 1 square mile. So there's 36 sections in every township. A little info that you don't need to know is how many acres are in a section or 1 square mile, but I give it to you anyway. The breakdown 640. Now, these surveyor chains that they used often to measure and plot out the land are of specific length, either 33 feet or 66 feet. And the surveyor would have to make a notation in their book, their notebook, as they draw their maps and do their measurements. They have to specify, often they do their measurements in old surveys in chains. So they would have to specify which length of chain they were using. So, metes and bounds. Let's go over that first legal description of land. A measurement of distance and direction around a property's boundaries, only used in the 13 original states, New Jersey being one of them. The POB, or point of beginning, is a designated point at which the measurement begins and ends. So basically, they'll do a survey and they'll measure around the property's boundaries. That point at one of the 4 corners of the property, or if it's more than 4 corners, I shouldn't say 4, that measurement where the property is boundaries are being measured from, the point at which they start that measurement is called the POB, or point of beginning. And it doesn't matter if the surveyor measures the property around from clockwise or counterclockwise, as long as they note which direction they're going in. So, metes and bounds is a meters and boundaries. It's a measurement of distance and direction around the property's boundary lines. It's only used in the 13 original states, and New Jersey's one of them. We're the 3rd state in the Union. So, a measurement of distance and direction around a property's boundary lines. The measurement begins and ends at the designated point of beginning. The surveyor's measurement can proceed clockwise or counterclockwise, as long as the surveyor notes what direction they're measuring around the boundaries, and must continue in that direction until the loop is closed and ends at the point of beginning where it started. Monuments are used to establish the real estate boundaries. Some people refer to them as surveyor stakes or ribbons, that you can pay them extra. When you pay to get a survey done on your property that you're buying, you can and should ask the surveyor how much it costs to put a stake in the ground at each of the corners. They charge you for each one of those markers. But now at least you'll be able to visually see where your property boundary lines are. You could draw a string around one to the other so that you could tie a string around one to the other so that you can now visually see what your property's boundary lines are. So here's a tip for you as the real estate agent. Should advise their client to shop around for surveyors. Don't just go with the one that the attorney will hire. Sometimes they rip you off with what they charge to put in those markers. I've seen them as little as $50 for each stake to as much as $475 for each stake. So ask how much they're charging to install the monuments at each of the corners. That's a separate charge from the survey itself, and the cost can vary widely, which they can negotiate or shop for before the survey is hired, the surveyor is hired, and the survey is done. They'll need the markers if they wish to put up a fence or a shed or anything like that to see where the boundaries are, which could be beyond the scope of most people's ability to find if simply looking at a surveyor's map. Let's highlight on page 354. Did we do any highlights on 353? Guys, did you do any? You did a highlight.
Yeah, towards the bottom
Yep.
where it says legal descriptions.
Yep. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. All right. I wasn't sure if I had it in the slideshow or not. Okay, let's do this. Page 354 under meets and bounds. Let's do this. Highlight. And then under the picture on the same page, you'll do this highlight. Monuments are fixed objects to establish real estate boundaries. Okay. So here's a picture of a survey. This is an example of a survey here. This is actually a survey of my property where the street is actually curved in front. So the surveyor not only has to measure the distance and direction, but now they have to measure the arch of the curve, So there's a lot of math involved for those that want to become surveyors. You can see here's the arch, the radius, the diameter. If you notice here, the street is over here. Here's where the curb is, but the surveyor's measurement is starting back here. Why is that? Well, because the first 6 feet of anybody's property, your city has a right of way to. They have an easement right to. If they wanted to, they could plant a tree in front of your house. Do you know that? They could put a sidewalk in front of your house. That first 6 feet would include about a 4-foot sidewalk and maybe a little 2-foot strip of grass over there. They could even plant a tree. They could put utilities there. They could put a telephone pole there if they wanted to, which over here they actually did on mine. You see it says utility pole. Thank goodness I'm arranging to have them move it over because it's blocking the corner of my 2-car driveway. which I expanded from a one-car driveway. But this surveyor kind of messed up because over here he put that I have an all asphalt driveway, but it's a concrete driveway, just like the concrete walkways that go around the property. So as you can see, it's also not a perfect rectangle either. It goes out at an angle here. You know, the length on this side is 123 feet. The length on this side is 105 feet. So it's kind of skewed in the back of the angle and the length over here. And this back neighbor, this lot, if you notice, he noted that their fence, there's a wood fence back there, their fence is actually coming onto my property. Now, since then, they built a new fence because that fence was falling apart, and I notified them about it, so they put it back on their property. They set it back because it was about 1.5 feet on my property. That wouldn't matter, I guess, out in the country, but in the city, you know, you want to safeguard all of your property, right? Especially since that back neighbor is kind of a jerk. So, here's a description of the land, how a legal description would look in a survey. So this is the actual legal description. It says, all that tract or parcel of land and premises situated lying on and between the city of Linden, county of Union, and the state of New Jersey, which known as designated Lot 8, Block 199-106 on a map entitled Map of Sunnyfield Incorporated. Okay, so basically, this is from back in 1949 when a builder was creating a subdivision. My whole section of town used to be a golf course. So the builder bought up that golf course, and then they started subdivisions of land in the area. And so all the houses in this area of Sunnyside section of Linden was all part of a golf course before. And so this is their subdivision of their block, lot number 8, block 199-106. Now, since then, as they created a bunch of subdivisions within that property itself, the municipality registers their subdivision maps and incorporates it into their own. So they essentially then become the city's lot and block numbers, which then have changed. So the foregoing premises are further described in accordance with a certain survey made by this surveyor back in 1978 when this property was purchased from the last owner. Beginning at a point on the southwesterly side of Sunnyfield Drive, which point is distant 312.06 feet along the various courses and distances of the southwesterly side. Would you guys, being able to read this, be able to figure out where they're starting their measurement from? Probably not. And then they move on so they're explaining here where their point of beginning measurement starts. And then they say that they'll continue from that point. Thence, along the said southwesterly side of Sunnyfield Drive in a general southwesterly direction on a curve to the left, having a radius of 325 feet, the arch distance of 56.72 feet to a point. Thence, south 55 degrees, 30 minutes, 0 seconds west, 123.52 feet to a point. Thence, north 16 degrees, 0 minutes, 00 seconds. See how they're doing their measurements? You have them north, south, east, west. They're using degrees of angles. And then minutes and seconds for the distance. Anyway, they end up plotting it out like this. So they started at some intersection point up here where their point of beginning began, and then they used that to find a corner of the property. Now, a rectangular survey, also known as the government survey, is used in Western states. It is not used in New Jersey or any of the 13 original states. You need to know that for exams as well. It was established by Congress in 1785. So the metes and bounds system is the older form of measurement of land that they also used to use in Europe and other places of the world. The rectangular survey system that's used in Western states was created in 1785, and they started using that in the United States. So obviously we don't use that here in New Jersey. We were a state before then. So the measurements locates the land using principal meridians and baseline measured by degrees of latitude and longitude to find areas of land called townships, which are 36 square miles in size. Each square mile is called a section. So each section is 1 square mile. So townships are numbered. Just like we have lot and block numbers, well, there are townships that are numbered in the states that use the rectangular survey. And they use degrees of latitude and longitude and these lines called principal meridians and baselines. You guys remember what principal meridians and baselines are? You ever have a globe in your classrooms in school?
Yeah.
You remember the imaginary lines like the equator and then the time zones? Some of them run horizontal, some of them run vertically. Well, those are your principal meridians and baselines. So they use those to find areas of land, just like sea captains and airline pilots have been using them for decades to use for centuries to circumnavigate the globe. Now, the rectangular survey also goes by the name government survey, is based on these principal meridians and baselines to locate areas of land called townships and sections. So each township's 36 square miles. Sections are 1 square miles in size. Each section is numbered 1 through 36. Section 16 is usually reserved for schools and 14 for government use. Not that you need to know that for exam, but you do need to know this. So you're going to highlight this in the book on page 354.
If it is not in New Jersey, then why it is a part of the course?
Well, we also have legal descriptions of land. Okay, so we have these legal descriptions of land, but we also have the proofs of ownership too. Some of them are not used in New Jersey. They're just general real estate concepts, and you need to know them. If you wanted to go get licensed in another state, you'll already have that information. You'll know it. I know. We're not in New Jersey. Why are they teaching us stuff that we don't need to use or know about here in New Jersey? I don't know. It's just general real estate concepts and they want you to understand them, I guess, for whatever reason. Everybody find this? Got that?
Yep, we've got it.
Okay, so then continuing on to the next page, the rectangular system is based on 2 intersecting lines, those principal meridians and baselines, okay? And then they find a township. Each township is numbered. So townships contain 36 square miles. Sections, a township is further divided into 36 numbered sections. And then I put a bracket around here and I wrote, these are units of measure. It has nothing to do with like municipality names, you know, like Woodbridge Township, Edison Township, Piscataway Township. It has nothing to do with that. That's just a form of government structure that has been chosen to manage those municipalities. We're talking about townships here, which are a unit of measure, which is 36 miles, 36 square miles or 6 miles squared. And each section contains 1 square mile. Now, here's an example. You may want to write this in here and put an arrow pointing down like I have it here. A legal description of land using the government or rectangular survey method would look like this. The SE quarter of the SE quarter of the SE quarter of section 1 would be a 10-acre square lot. So what is this right here? This is a township. How do I know that? Because there's 36 boxes, and each one of these boxes is called a section, and each one of them sections is 1 square mile. And if we're about to zoom in on one of these sections, I'll show you what it looks like. But let's first take all these notes down. Let me know once you got that, and we'll move on.
I've got it. Got it.
All right, everybody good? Everybody got it? All right. So if we were to zoom in, okay, so here's a township, and each one of them, you see they're numbered from the top. They count to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right, the numbers. That's just the way that they do it. I don't know why. Now, if we were to zoom in on one of those sections, this is what it would look like. The entire section is 1 square mile. And if we were to look at it and draw a line straight down the center and then this way to quarter it off, to section it, to make 4 squares, right? This is the southeasternly section. And if we were to quarter it off again, this is the southeasterly section of the southeasterly section. And if we were to quarter that off again, this is the southeast quarter of the southeast quarter of the southeast quarter, which is 10 acres in size. You see how they got to that measurement using that example, the description that they gave here in the book? So how do they find those townships? Well, look at the globe. Look at the planet Earth. Here's a globe. And they got those imaginary lines running across and up and down. They're separated by certain degrees of latitude and longitude. Another interesting factoid, time zones began here in New Jersey. So you got the prime meridians, which run north and south, and the baselines is the equator. So now if you zoom in on one of those townships, which are located by degrees of latitude and longitude, then you zoom in on the section, and then we break it down even further. All right, so lastly, we have a plat map, which is a map of a subdivision indicating the location and boundaries of an individual property. The map is recorded in the county where the land is located. So each lot location is designated by lot and block number within the map. By the way, here 343, 356, 371, these are all page numbers that have plat maps on them. And let me see if I could get to that page and adjust that. Pages with plat maps. If you have not yet, snap a picture of this slide because this has all the information that you really need to study. Benchmarks, datums, monuments, meets and bounds, point of beginning, rectangular government survey, what a township, what a section is, that they're not used in the 13 original states, and that a plat map is a map of a subdivision indicating the location and boundaries of an individual property. The map is then recorded in the county where the land is located. Anybody need me to hold here for a minute so you can take a picture or no?
Got the photo.
All right.
Got it.
It really is a good study guide all in one place here. I kind of condensed your notes and all your highlights that are all over the place, right? You got all those explanations right here for you. All right, so a plat of a subdivision we know is a map of a subdivision locating where each of the individual properties are located. Each municipality consists of many subdivisions, which were built over the years as the municipalities were being developed. The tax maps are basically all the subdivision maps within the community that are then attached to each other. So descriptions of land designated by lot and block number in order to locate on the map are designated by lot and block number. The plat map of a subdivision, the land is divided into blocks and lots. Now, it does indicate the streets and access roads for public use, but they also do often lay out in the plat maps any easements. Subdivision plat for condominium would also, if it's multi-story condominium, where you have a couple of units in the same space, but one is above the other, on a flat map, it would look like this is impossible. We got 3 different properties at the same exact location. Well, this is why we now need to turn that map sideways and turn it 3D, 3-dimensional. And your property description will also include a measurement of elevation. What do we call that measurement of elevation? What is a measurement of elevation? It's called the datum, datum, however you want to pronounce it. So you have to have spelled out what the datum is starting out and where the ceiling is ending. And then the next unit starts out at a certain elevation, and then the unit above that begins at a different elevation. That may be included in a condominium description as well. So here's one example of another plat map. So here we're highlighting on page 356 that a plat of a subdivision is a map of a subdivision. A plat is a subdivision filed with the clerk in the county in which the land is located. So we just wrote there next to this because it's simpler the way I wrote it. Plat of a subdivision is a map of a subdivision. And once again, all the pages in this book that have a map of a subdivision on them here. 343, 356, 371.
Victor, I'm so sorry. Can I snap a photo? Yep. Okay.
No, I just went back to make sure that I have
Oh,
these page numbers the same there on the previous one.
okay. Okay.
So just do the highlights and write that map of a subdivision. See, this itself could have been one property that was a small subdivision. This itself could have been the next door neighbor's property that they then subdivided. And all they do is they just keep attaching the subdivision maps together until they build out the whole community. And you can't really I don't know if that has a street name there, or that may just be the street name or the road. But often at the edges of these maps, they show what map number it is, and then map numbers. Then you could just print them out and put them together to build the bigger map, and then you have the whole city. I know the Garden State MLS, the tax records that they give us access to, um, gives you access to all of these maps, the deeds, and all that. Some MLSs have better tax record systems that we could have access to than others. Okay, everybody got those highlights in the notes?
Yep, got it.
So this is that other subdivision of that cul-de-sac street where they built the 8 lots on it, right? And look, you see you have a utility easement for public utilities notice here. Where is it? 12-foot easement for public utilities over here. Now, they don't have it stipulated on here that I could see where they put the street here. They even named it West F Street, but it doesn't say here if they dedicated it or if it's remaining a private road. It'll have to be somewhere in the paperwork that they submit to the city, though. Often it's done right on the map if it's going to be dedicated or if it's going to remain a private road. Why would you want to keep it a private road if you're selling off all the houses? You know, now you would need to maintain that road, fix potholes, shovel the snow, you know, plow the snow regularly, you know. So a subdivision like this would usually dedicate that land. Here, I just took that same picture and I laid it out. So you could see it a little bit better. That's the cul-de-sac street. Here's all the property lots. Here is the actual layout of the entire land. Here's another type of tax map. If you could see in the corners, you know, map 25 goes over here. So sheet 24 goes over here. Map 25 would connect up here. Sheet 30 on this side, sheet 26 on this side, where you could connect the different map numbers to build out from this one subdivision. So a licensed surveyor prepares a survey, shows the location and dimension of the parcels of the land, shows location, size, shape of the buildings on the lot. When are surveys used? Well, when you convey a portion of the lot, when you place a mortgage, determining legal descriptions, subdividing land, or for construction reasons. Hell, I need to build a shed in my backyard. I'm tearing down the shed that's sinking in the ground. I'm going to put down some, a stronger base there, and I'm going to put up a new shed. The city wants a survey, so I went and I got a survey done so that then I could show it to them. So boom, they needed a survey for my shed. So you got a wood shed here. That thing's, I built it many years ago. It's falling apart already or starting to sink and rot a little bit around the edges. But for the most part, it stood its time, but time to go and be upgraded. And I'm going to put a bigger one in. But because I'm putting a bigger one in, the city wants a survey. So I had to get them this survey before I put that in. But as you can see on this zoomed in survey, the neighbor's current fence was going over the property line, which we call that an encroachment, right? So I notified them. So when they put up their new fence, they straightened it out and they had another survey done and they had the markers put in the ground. And now they put the fence where it belongs. I should take some pictures of that where they still got their markers and flags out there. So there's my shed out there in the back. Here is one survey marker where they put a wood stake in the ground. Now, the reason why this guy put a wood stake in the ground is actually if you dig up the grass right there, there is a metal stake already buried in the ground. They put it a couple inches below the surface where you could always just dig up a little bit and get to it and pull it up. They never really rip them out of the ground. It makes no sense. So what if I wanted to, I could have just gotten a metal detector out there sweeping the ground and I could find it. If you notice the distance from that marker to the curb, well, that's where the surveyor began their survey from, this distance as well. If you recall, you see that, how far it is away from the curb? Why? Because those first 6 feet or so are the city has an easement right to it. Now, I talked to the utility company and I'm getting them to move this pole, so they're going to move it over because it's in my way of my driveway here. All right. So once again, that's a municipal survey, the tax map. Okay, so measuring elevation. Condominiums, they measure elevation using the datum. The 0 elevation is the mean sea level at New York Harbor. And that's throughout the United States. Large cities establish a local official datum. At some point, they worked their way from New York Harbor, and then they work it across the country to find out what your elevation is. So page 357 is a place where we finally learn about these, or where we'll finally highlight these definitions. A point line or surface from which elevations are measured or indicated is a datum. It's defined by the U.S. Geological Survey as the mean sea level at New York Harbor. And to aid surveyors, permanent reference points called benchmarks have been established throughout the United States. Those benchmarks, those are those markers that they put in rocks, in bricks. What do you call that? The marker that the surveyor puts in the ground. Those spikes, those wooden or steel spikes that they put in the ground. What do we call those?
Oh, pretty markers.
Yeah, but we call them monuments. Monuments are the markers that the surveyors would put in the ground at each of the corners of our property so that we could identify our boundaries. That you pay them extra money to put them in.
Victor, sorry, I know you said it, but when it's a private, like a private road, when you go inside the house, you are like on charge of that? This is like a more personal stuff. Like
For a private road, what do you mean when you're landlocked property?
yes, it's a private road. Like it's just 2 houses in this street, my neighbor. So we have private road that we had to name it, but the city do the many years ago they do the street, but they don't do the maintenance. So I don't know. We had to do the maintenance.
I believe so on those private roads. I know of one in Metuchen like that behind a couple of very expensive homes. They have a private road. It looks like you're pulling into someone's driveway, but it's actually a road that's kind of a dirt road that goes behind the houses where you could come into them through the dirt road in the back too. That it's not owned by any of those individual properties.
No, because a road doesn't even show in the GPS or nothing. It's not even showing.
Yeah, it's not an official city street either.
Okay, so
services those properties.
Because I heard you talking about it. So I will ask. I will ask when you give me the chance.
Yeah, it really depends on the ownership of it. It may be all on one person's land and there's an easement there, where they give the neighbors the right to cross over it to get to their driveways. The only way to get through may be through the back entrance, for example. You know, when you have these dirt roads that come up and go from behind.
Yes.
So it'd be you would have an easement right, but it would be somebody that actually owns that land.
Yes. No, we are at the end, two houses. That's it.
You got to see on the survey what it says about
Yeah, I
that.
saw it. Like the old owner of this house, he has to name it and do everything. So it's
Mhm.
like our neighbor is like belong to us.
So they own it then. Whoever named it there, they're the one that owns it.
Yes, all neighbor, like all owner, like for the
So
15 years ago.
so they're probably the one that owns it.
Okay.
The one who named it, they're probably the owner of the land. However, they cannot restrict others from using that road because they have an easement right.
Yes. Okay.
And
Thank you.
remember, when you have rights, you can't take them from anybody. So they have a right to cross over that land. If you're the one that owns it, the neighbors have the right to cross over it because that right exists already.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So once again, here's this slide that has all this information here about the types of legal descriptions, benchmarks, datums, monuments, etc. Here's the updated one where I put that numbers there. All right, now a deed. Okay, so we're done right now. We're done with the legal descriptions of land. The rest of this chapter now talks about deeds and the anatomy of a deed. Okay, so